uh, it was treated really badly by both him and which he was a fool for doing it because it was very rude. David Icke is a fool for going on mainstream TV. If he needs to stay away from it, but he doesn't learn. He doesn't learn. He has to be valid. He has to get them back all the time, and so and so. He courted all that crowd on the David Icke forum. Russell is going to Simus, he's going to Simus, and then that was for his Messiah tour, and all the David Icke fans were all going to see Russell Brand's stupid comedy stage show, the Messiah tour. Now let's get back to the cult thing, right? How do you know one of the symbols you always can tell about a cult, a really powerful one, is that if you go to many of these cult websites, their logo or their cult name will be surrounded by a plethora of all the great, well, we shouldn't say great because they're all bollocks, all the symbols of all the world's religions, top religions. The Star of David will be there, the Om symbol of Buddhism will be there, the crucifix will be there, all these little symbols, they'll all be there. They'll all be embedded in the logo, just like Russell Brand embedded himself in all these New Age logos. He was a New Age cult, so that got up all the New Agers, all the New Age bimbo airheads, the most vicious and hateful ones of all, who attacked me, and so they're all in on the cult then. Now they're all following the cult. On top of that, he deliberately made himself in the poster look like Jesus Christ, because there's nothing that controls the mind of a highly educated and an atheist more than anything else than the Christ archetype. Oh, but yea, I hear you say, I'm an atheist. I'm rational. I would never be led by a Christ archetype. Oh, you dumb motherfucker. You absolutely will, because that image has been so deeply embedded in your archetypal consciousness going back centuries and centuries that when that image is flashed in front of you, not even if you're a feckin' Bolshevik, you become intoxicated by it. Unless you're like me and an increasing number of people that might bring back the snake circle, you have decoupled yourself from Middle Eastern consciousness programming. But no, you go straight into it. Now, on top of that, he also tries to make himself look like that mass-murdering banker, and of course he's tied up with the bankers, Che Guevara, a vicious Bolshevik murderous thug, a psychopath, who is basically the poster boy for every upper-middle-class moron in the English-speaking world. So he had it all. So he scoops them all in like a Christ Messiah. And they all go, we're all individuals. We're standing up against the political system. And he tells them not to vote. Do not vote. Don't vote. They're all the same. They're all the same. And so then they're saying, they're not voting, okay? They're not voting. No. Then I jumped into the argument, and then I got fucking savaged for it. But that's life. That's what happens when you're unbelievably cool like me. Because I'm so much cooler than Russell Brand. Russell Brand is so uncool next to me. I told him that today. I left him a message, and I sent that to him today. And the Labour Party. His Labour Party spooks did everything to suppress that comment. But he's not as cool as me. I'm way cooler than him. The only person that would think he was cool is some douchebag who wears an anonymous mask or carries his book and wears one of those Middle Eastern scarves and thinks he's a radical. Hello, my name is Chester Smedlington of the Cambridge Socialist Workers' Party, and I fully endorse Russell Brand to overthrow the aristocratic class system in this country once they don't cancel the Henley Regatta, and secondly, that Lady Elizabeth Jacinta Knox Fitzroy Hamilton is not able to shag everyone behind the boat lodge before coming out and calling everybody else a sexual misconductor. If her ankles are behind her legs and she's filled with every single known venereal disease contracted by a plethora of public school boys recently back from visiting, the House of Commons, she is still an innocent flower. And every single working class male, even if he only had one sexual partner in his life, is a sexual misconductor. Yes, Lady Jacinta Hamilton's Socialist Work Party, and I both support Russell Brand to overthrow the aristocratic nature of this state. And that's what they're like. That's what these kind of motherfuckers you're dealing with, right? This is what they're like. Now, so it took them all to this point. The Occupy crowd have been brought to this point. The Obama change once been taken to this point. All the 2012 people, the ones who've listened to David Icke for years and years and years, telling them that there was going to be a big awakening, got them all to this point, right? They're all behind Russell Brand. They're all there, along with the Alex Jones crowd. They're all there, right? And then suddenly, a couple of days ago, he drops the bombshell, which I predicted, that he tells everyone to vote Labour. Collapses. Bang! So they're all, you've got 50% of them who are like, what a douchebag. And the system doesn't want them, because they know you won't do anything. You're so disgusted by all your faith put in this thing that you won't do anything else. You say, fuck it, and you throw your hands in the air, right? That's that one's. The other 50% are going to go, Russell says we should vote Labour, so let's vote Labour. And the game is over. It's been won. So there's no chance of an awakening thing, because anyone who has ever had a political awakening in the last 10 years, either through the 2012 thing, Anonymous, Occupy, Russell Brand, they've all, and even all the other minor, smaller ones like Edward Snowden and WikiLeaks and all this, they've all been brought to believe that there was going to be some kind of major payoff. There was going to be some kind of massive payoff, and it never came. And Russell Brand was their last throw of the dice. And they've thrown it. Now, this is what happens in the final stage of cult membership. The final stage of cult membership is when you, even when this has been done to you, you still follow the cult leader. That's because literally the neural pathways in your brain have been so wired towards external salvation and so corrupted against your own self of self-autonomy, independence, and personal monomyth that you no longer know how to take care or look after your own consciousness anymore. And you absolutely, like a member of a cult, you need that stewardship. You need that stewardship to keep you going on. Then, that's the point, they become psychotic. Because they're in the last chance saloon. They've decided, they had that last, after they were betrayed by the cult leader, they had that last dice in their hand, and they threw the dice, and they still crapped out. They still crapped out. And then, there's no other choice here but for them to viciously attack, to viciously assault, destroy the people who point them out for they really are. Like all cults do. There's never a gentleman's kind of understanding that, well, he's entitled to his opinion. There's never a kind of a laissez-faire maturity or wisdom. Who cares what he says? We won't run a smear campaign. The cult member does not do that. The cult member can only justify their own stupidity by becoming a crazed fanatic. And so that's why I've subtitled this show, Survival of the Fanatical. Because the ones who are still voting and supporting Russell Brand are the fanatical muppets that every cult leader needs. The ones that keep them living in paradise. And so they got it. The rest are either too shocked, too disheartened, or too embarrassed to ever want to do anything again, so their activism has been completely destroyed. But there's others who are like, see, there's cult members, this is why cult members never recover. They just go to another cult. I can guarantee, even on that Scientology documentary Going Clear, I can guarantee that even the ones who've blown the whistle on Scientology, I'd say many of them have ended up in other cults, whether it be born again Christian cults or some other UFO or science fiction cult. Once the cults have been taken to that level in a cult, there's absolutely no way out. Your brain is so hardwired that you'll always be seeking answers because you cannot think for yourself. And the more highly educated you are, in a formal sense, like having degrees in college, the more easy you are to control, because you're looking for someone to replace the college professor who told you what to think and do, so you get that little piece of paper. You're spending the rest of your life looking for that little piece of paper. So I spent, what, 3/4 of an hour talking about the Russell Brand phenomena. I hope you've learned something from this. Those of you who have been disappointed, I'm not knocking you or putting you down anymore. Once you've said, screw him, he's a dickhead, and moved on, I don't blame you. Good for you. But I hope that you learn from this experience. I hope that you learn from this. Now, I'm going to keep talking for a second because I think I need to take a break because my throat is sore. I'm wondering if Paula has a song that she could play, anything, just for a couple of minutes while I take a little break here. I don't know if you have, Paula. I'll just hear the music start and I know you do. Or you can just interrupt me and tell me if you have a song, if you have one handy. If not, I should have said this beforehand because I'm expending a lot of energy. This is what I do for you lot. And welcome back to the Velocity of Now, me, your host, Thomas Sheridan. I hope you can hear me okay. We had a bit of a technical difficulty there. I think I know what this is a battery-operated mic. And if I go it again, I'll just be gone for a second to grab another mic. Thank you, Paula, for playing a song then while I was getting a cup of tea. And though I don't know what the song was, so I hope it was good. I was just realizing when I was away then, I should have actually played a song myself. And I just quickly, this is probably going to be applicable to the next segment of the show. There's a lady I know who's 14 years old, and why isn't Jimmy Page in prison? Sorry, the guitar's a bit out of tune. Yeah, why isn't Jimmy Page in prison? And Rolf Harris is. That is the question. Now, I'm not asking for Jimmy Page to be locked up, or I'm not asking for a witch hunt against him. Christ almighty, there's been enough of that already. But Jimmy Page, who at the height of Led Zeppelin had 14-year-old groupies. Now, that's pretty incredible when you think from the same period, Rolf Harris is locked up for years and years and years and classed a paedophile for doing the same thing at the same time. What makes Rolf Harris get that sentence and Jimmy Page gets the Kennedy Award from President Obama? That's an interesting question, I think. Now, like I said, I'm not saying we should go after Jimmy Page or anything like that. I'm just saying that why is there one law for one celebrity and one law for another? You don't believe that Jimmy Page had a 14-year-old groupie girlfriend? Look it up yourself. He most certainly did, and possibly Robert Plant did too. Now, I posted a blog post today about about Rolf Harris, mainly after being contacted by some people who are trying to basically get justice for the guy. Now, I know what you're all thinking. Well, I was looking over the Rolf Harris case recently, and basically, he shouldn't have even been charged. He shouldn't have even been brought into a police station, let alone brought to trial, and let alone found guilty, based on the so-called evidence they have. Now, I'm not saying he's innocent or guilty. I'm just saying his trial was bogus. And I know what some of you are going to be screaming out there, I don't want the BBC. No. Just because, you see, this is what I have to teach some people about witch hunts. You can't get caught up in witch hunts. This is I know that I'm sure I know there are satanic child abuse cults, but that doesn't mean that everyone is one. That's why I go by evidence, and there was no evidence for, say, Hampstead. But they do exist. Just like there were sick pedos and there was Jimmy Savile at the BBC, that doesn't mean that every one of them were automatically guilty for the same reason. Now, I looked at the Rolf Harris case, and it is as dodgy as anything. Now, I want to read this article today, and I'm going to extrapolate on it. It's on my website. If you go to thomassheridanarts.com and go to the blog, the article is up there today. Is Rolf Harris just a prize prisoner for the feminist and the crown? Right, and sorry about that, losing the mic again while I was reading the article about, well, the blog post I've written about Rolf Harris. We're all set now. Anyway, was Rolf Harris completely innocent? I honestly can't say so, because frankly he did not receive a fair trial from reading over the court hearings and evidence. In fact, I'm convinced that there was literally a price on his head mentality surrounding the case. So much so that it seemed as if the prosecution, jury and court officials had a brief to make sure he was found guilty. Sounds far-fetched? That something like this would actually happen? Tell that to the Birmingham 6, Guildford 4 and Maguire 7, all found guilty of being IRA bombers based on, once again, little or no evidence in a British court. The determining factor was anti-Irish hysteria in the media, which copper-fastened the guilty verdicts of these completely innocent people no matter what. Was the hysteria and hype surrounding Operation Yewtree any less visceral? Witch hunt in nature and satisfaction at any cost driven? Similar to that of the IRA mainland bombing campaign of the 1970s, yes, the IRA did in fact murder British civilians with bombs. Likewise, with Operation Yewtree, there was no doubt about the crimes and guilt of Jimmy Savile, who, by the way, never stood trial under the same system which found Rolf Harris guilty based on flimsy, if not bizarre at times, evidence. And that real sex crimes against innocent young people were indeed committed in the BBC. Is a collective witch hunt in this PC and feminist age any less wicked and psychopathic as they were back in an anti-Irish age in the UK back in the 1970s? The following letter was sent to me by a person seeking justice, which is not the same thing as being let off for Rolf Harris, which is certainly worth all our consideration depending on Her Majesty's justice system and the hysterical mainstream media who likewise protected Jimmy Savile, to decide the guilt of a man based on unsubstantiated accusations from various dubious persons. Again, I'm not saying Rolf Harris is guilty or innocent, but I have no doubt he did not receive a fair trial, and that his case is as much about a female-style feminist being used to destroy traditional male role models and family men. And there's another aspect to it as well, that Queen's portrait. I think Rolf Harris pissed off the Prussian royal family that rules England with that portrait he did of the Queen, because he painted her exactly as what she is and how she doesn't want to be seen. There is a distinct sensation of sneering malice in that portrait that he did of her. And these people have not changed from the day when Henry VIII chopped off their heads or they sent them to the Tower. These people are still the same beasts. And I have no doubt that that played a factor in Rolf Harris being sent down. He's also being retroactively punished for the Savile getting off. It's almost to say, well, we let Savile get away with it, and much, much worse. Remember, I believe Savile was a serial killer, and I've no doubt, like the Russell Brand and Labour thing, I'll be validated with that one day. That was also to throw the masses a bone to salivate it. But also, it plays in with the whole thing of the shock doctrine that I was talking about, where they shock people to the point where they'll just believe anything anymore. It's interesting that this Rolf Harris stuff was happening around the same time that the Russell Brand thing was coming up. It was almost like at the same time they're demolishing the Britain of the past in order to bring in the Britain of the future. Destroying the traditional values of the past to bring in the new values. Now, the new values have nothing to do with the people or morality. They're to do with the political and business elite of the future. So I'm just saying that Rolf Harris was probably no saint, but does he deserve to go to prison for the same thing that Jimmy Page is considered cool for doing? Just let that sink in and have a think about it. Now, it's been a funny old week. There was a story also came out this week that beards are full of shit. Some stupid group in America whipped up a typical bullshit story that human beards contain more feces than a toilet. Of course, like every moron on the earth shared it, believing it. And that's again, there's a very sinister thing to that as well. It's almost like there's two things to that. A chap called Dale, I think, pointed out that the reason why they're trying to get fellas to shave their beards because they're telling them they're full of shit is because all these hipsters and all these people wearing trendy beards at the moment. Of course, I had a beard before all that stuff was cool. That beards destroy facial recognition software. And that's a huge factor in this. Beards destroy facial recognition software. And that's what they learned from all the hipsters. And that's why they're trying to get people to take their beards off. And also, my friend Zita on Facebook also said that they can't make robots grow hair. They just can't make it grow hair yet. They can stick kind of hair on them, but they can't make them grow hair. And so, in the robotic transhumanist future, that's what we're heading towards. Sort of like blank, expressionless, featureless human beings. Kind of people that don't look like anything. There's no face there. Kind of like Nicolas Cage. Anyway, I'm talking more about cults tonight and how all these cults all go back to the secret services to some degree. I want to give an example of how a cult was used, other than the Russell Brand cult, how a cult was used to bring in public policy. And that's the Westboro Baptist Church. Now I hear people going, them fuckers, them bastards, protesting at the death of American soldiers and calling them fags and all this stuff. Yes, that bunch. Now, people forget that Fred Phelps, the guy behind it, he was trained at West Point Military Academy. Bet you never knew that one. Try checking that out. And he had an interesting history, like so many of these cult leaders, before, shall we say, he was finally activated. Now, what was the purpose of the Westboro Baptist Church? Well, the purpose of the Westboro Baptist Church was to protest the funerals of American servicemen during the Iraq War in order to generate sympathy for the war cause. It was classic gaslighting. So if an American Marine or soldier was killed in that war for oil, most Americans were kind of disgusted by the war. They did not support it. Of course, a lot did, but there was plenty of liberal types who didn't, and intelligent ones. So in order to swing them around, they had to make them feel sorry for the people and the families of servicemen who were killed. Enter the Westboro Baptist Church. Now, like all cults, their main thing is to cause sensation and hysteria, smear campaigns, a load of noise, get themselves noticed in order to get people to join up, because they're basically doing a shotgun approach. And over the years, they had built up a whole bunch of mental cases and lunatics. And like all cults, the cult leader had married off the daughters who'd been raised to not be able to function outside the court, to the most pathetic and servile fanatics inside the cult. So there was basically had a perfectly primed cult fanaticism. Daughters who were raised to believe there was no life for them outside the cult, that they were betraying their parents if they didn't believe in their parents' cult things, and that they had to marry someone that they gave to them. And it was always a cult fanatic who's rewarded with the daughter of the cult leader as a sex prize. A sex prize. Because remember the fellas who join cults are pathetic losers. They've longed in their heart to be Luke Skywalker, or they've longed in their heart to be a knight or something like that. And they were just like, they'd no friends at school, they probably didn't get laid in college. And the cult leaders suss these things out right away. And they play on these unfulfilled Luke Skywalker, Agent Mulder, Percival, Lancelot needs in these people, and they play upon them, and they put them in a position where there's no other choice for them in this life, because they've burned all their bridges in terms of having them part of this cult and making them look crazy in the eyes of the rest of the world. And then they reward them by presenting one of their own children as a sex prize to the cult fanatic. The cult fanatic can't actually believe it's happened, but they've been rewarded, so they have a roof over their head, a job, you can call it a job, and a sex prize of a child that's been raised and brainwashed by the cult leadership in the middle. And, your man Phelps did this at the Westboro Baptist Church. So he had the perfect collection of fanatics and muppets activated to the kind of Charlie Hebdo attack level, that kind of crazed fanatics. And so they went down and he was probably called at some point. I'm sure he was. He was contacted by the DARPA, and they told him, "Okay, Fred, your orders now are to be activated and go out and start protesting and calling, servicemen who've been buried or killed in action fags and things like that." And so they go out there and they do that. Now, this disgusts people quite rightly. They can't believe what they're seeing, and also they attack popular things like Jews, Catholics, and gay people as well. And they do things like stomping the American flag, all classic intelligence services briefs to do this. And then what happens then is the people who were against the Iraq war suddenly then have sympathies for the soldiers they probably wouldn't have had before. They probably would have said, "Oh, dumb idiots who just joined up to, because they couldn't get any other job." That kind of thing. Now they feel sorry for them. And so that's the first part of it. And also because of the Westboro Baptist Church, George Bush was able to bring in a whole slew of laws where you could not criticize servicemen serving in Iraq. So that was the psyop which they were done for. And this is why all cults are created by the intelligence services for the day when they're needed to attack sincere activists, to destroy their reputations and try and do things like that. You can always tell a cult because they'll spend as much of their time attacking the enemies of the cult leader as they do anything else through what they might have, like they might call them alternative newsletters or news sites and stuff like that, which are just grooming things for the cult. And so there's so many similarities to these cults. They often have you can always tell when they've been set up by the intelligence services. There's always a kind of someone who's been trained either by the military in the sort of like the kind of parental level of it, either by the military or they have been a senior civil servant or academic, often in a foreign country, and they go to the United States thinking they're going to get a top job in a university. They only find out that they've been brought over from another country in order to be told that they're going to be leading a cult, a New Age cult and things like this. So you often find things like that. And you often find they have similar color scheme. Remember I said earlier on that they use the same symbols: the cross, the Star of David, the Ohm symbol. This is to cast the net wide. There's always a strong kind of a Christian thing as well. Like I told you about the Christian programming that all these people have who've forgotten their indigenous background, their indigenous upbringing, their indigenous archetypes within them. And on top of that, they always seem to have websites that are blue and white. I don't know if that's an intelligence calling card. Because the intelligence services often have calling cards to one another, but they always seem to have a two-tone blue and white website. I don't know why that is, but that seems to be with all the flying saucer death cult and all the other kinds of cults. It always seems to be a blue and white website. Don't ask me why. It just maybe someone in the Pentagon came up with found out that people are more susceptible to a blue and white website on a screen. But that's the way it is. And the fonts will be a sans serif font for the headlines and a serif font for the text. I don't know why. It just seems to be that way. If you look at them, they're all like that. I'm not joking. All the cult websites. And along with all the attacking people and all this kind of thing they do, to get attention, to make themselves look as notorious as possible. They don't care because they're cashing checks that are being given to them by the intelligence services, so the money always comes in no matter what. And all these lawyers they're able to hire, that's all paid for through the donate buttons and through the intelligence services checks they cash. In order to destroy meaningful activism. We're being attacked by a multi-pronged approach here. So that's cults would really be the theme of tonight's show, both the Russell Brand cult and other kinds of cults as well. And there's a very deep reason why we're like this. It's because we've been programmed for so long. But I know this is going to piss off a lot of Christians, but I don't care. But this kind of cult programming would have never been possible if it wasn't for Christianity. It's Christianity who has brought us all to this level, because it's Christianity that allowed the Middle Eastern monotheism to impregnate itself within the Western consciousness. One God, one king, one ruler, one path to salvation. And that gives us the Jesus archetype, follow me to salvation. Jesus Christ was the first cult leader, and all cult leaders have to do after that is model themselves on Jesus Christ. They're not like the European archetypes and gods, which are really representations or manifestations of the human consciousness and deep inside us. They're a very different thing. They're always about, instead of only, in the traditional European pantheon, all these gods represented unleashed or necessary aspects and archetypes of the consciousness that could be pulled out to get you through various aspects of your life. Christianity is, unlike all the theocracy from the Middle East, it's all about an external salvation with a god archetype. Now, I'm going to be appearing at the AV6 again this year. I've been asked back again at the Steventon Park Hotel in Daventry, and that's in Northants in the middle of England, and that's on the 15th of May to Monday morning, the 17th of May. I might actually do a tarot workshop on the Monday morning on the 17th before I go back to Ireland. But there's a great bunch of speakers, and it's a wonderful event, and it's not expensive considering all you get for it: the food, the meals, the lovely hotel room, and you get to hang out with all the speakers in a very relaxed, comfortable, friendly atmosphere, and lots of lovely people show up as well. I just want to, before I close the show tonight, read out something that is very important for me at this point in my life, because what I'm going to be talking about at the show in Daventry, also one part will be about the removal of water from the Irish consciousness is really an attack on everything Gaelic, because in Ireland the original term for water is Ishkabaha, which means the water of life, and water was sacred to the Gaelic people. It was sacred. It was beyond. It was a god almost in of itself. And this thing with Irish water, and even calling itself Irish water, is part of this psychic attack upon us. That's one aspect. But the other part of I just want to read you the brief from the event. And it goes: following from his research into the psychopath, serial killers, and the psychopathic control grid, Sheridan turns his attention to exploring the topic on a deeper metaphysical and spiritual level after a life-changing encounter with an African shaman. What started out as a study of mythological archetypes and spirituality soon became a fascination with the idea of human consciousness actually being under attack from a form of consciousness parasite. Along with consulting literary and archival sources, field and lab work was also undertaken in an attempt to determine if any evidence to validate the vast and remarkably similar canon of folklore proclaiming that humans are affected by non-material forms of consciousness that interact often with horrific consequences for mankind, something which many top scientists and engineers were attempting during the early days of radio and TV, often with surprising success and shocking personal consequences. All human mythology and spiritual prophecy is completely metaphorical and not a portrayal of literal events. The monsters, demons, and scenes of cataclysmic folklore are not portrayals of earthly real-world disasters. They are indeed reflections of how the psychosocial battles actually take place within the domain of human consciousness. Are we in the Viking end time of Ragnarok? Has the transition to digital electronics opened up a pathological superhighway into our minds and souls via the possibility of a sentient Internet of Things? Are the cataclysms of toxic tidal waves and weather warfare described within the Ragnarok story happening right here and right now? Is Loki about to break out of his cage, and if so, what is our best defense? The Jin Dibuk infected and alien religions of the Middle East, salvation by the CIA MI5 created space alien channeling cults as part of their weaponized mythology to hide secret technology and black operations, propagandas by intelligence services funded contactee cults in Hollywood. Or do we, as individuals, tap into our European indigenous archetypes and unleash the Odin and Freya inside us all? This presentation will be a sensational culmination of Thomas Sheridan's years of study into how to construct a consciousness firewall around our bombarded psyche. And I hope to see you in a couple of weeks at AV6 in Daventry. That's again the Steventon Park Hotel. It's Friday the 15th of May to Monday the 17th of May. And the website address you need to go to is Alternative View. That's all one word, .co.uk. So that's it for tonight's show. Thank you for Paula and Neil and everyone else for letting the show run over a little bit later than usual, although it probably wasn't much later considering we had the technical difficulties, which I apologize for. It's completely my fault. And remember, what have we learned this week? That there are cults ready to trap us all. They are personality cults. They are celebrity cults. They are flying saucer cults. They are channeling cults. They are comet debt cults. They are flat earth cults. They are Russell Brand cults. What you've learned this week and what you should have learned this week is two things. One, never, ever, ever again put your hopes in someone external to you as an individual. Only follow your own path. And two, feck 'em if they can't take a joke. Good night, and I'll see you next time.